Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at the first 3 years of Upper Deck SP in baseball. Now, in 1989, Upper Deck had created what we call the premium brand. It had created a whole new niche in the trading card industry, and for 1989, it owned that market. In 1990, it got a couple of brands that joined the party, and in 1991, pretty much everybody joined the party. So Upper Deck was no longer dominant of the premium brand market. And they were the first brand to bridge all four sports. So they had that going for them, but still, the stakes were pretty high. And in 1992, everybody was refining this portion of the market. So it was very clear to everybody that there was another step that everyone was going to have to take. On top of that, Topps released a football test set called Finest, which basically laid down the gauntlet for everybody that there was a new level they had to get to, which we call the Ultra Premium. And that's what Topps Finest was. And so for 1993, everybody had to take this seriously. And all four of the major brands did. Obviously, in 1993, Topps released Finest in baseball as an official set. And this was kind of a gimmick card, the way that they approached it. It was really neat, but still, it was kind of a gimmick. In Fleer's case, they released Flair, and Flair was a very simplified card that was based on being just very formal and very elegant. Score decided to go with more of a modernist approach with their select cards and make something kind of bold. And Upper Deck wanted to continue to define the market, so they were going to have to really pull it off. And for their SP set, they worked on building a level of quality that nobody had quite gotten to. They wanted to pull everything in and make a card that was almost a jewel box-like creation. Now, 1993 was an unusually good design year for Upper Deck, and all four of their sports looked really good. So part of what they did was basically get rid of the white border that was kind of their definition. And once you did that, the card became a lot more rich. So with a 3/4 bleed, basically no white on this card at all, it was a picture that just ran off on three sides with a simple bar at the bottom with a fade from a team color to white. And then they had a couple of boxes with the two team colors up on the top left, just kind of add some interest. And then they added some detailing with bronze, a bronze foil logo, and then some bronze detailing etched onto the card. And baseball has always been kind of built on tradition. And that's what Upper Deck wanted to go with here. They wanted to go with a traditional look, and that's what they pulled off. It was very modern, but it had a traditional quality to it because of all the fine detailing. And that was really the thing that made this card work. But on top of that, they didn't choose upfront pictures, which is pretty common for brands to do. Instead, they used more of a distant shot, almost like you're sitting on the side of the field and the players are out there, a little ways away from you, but kind of close. And the detailing on the card is what really made those images jump out. So even though everything was small, it was very accessible. And the whole creation of this card was a landmark creation. And it stands as one of the benchmark cards of all time. It's a card that would continue to define the ultra premium level going forward because it really does stand at the beginning of it. Now, the card backs are also really nice. It has a big picture, it has some details, and it has an unusually large amount of written information on the back, which is unusual for Upper Deck. They got quite a bit on here. And Upper Deck's never been very good with card backs, but this year they really hit it. But the best part about it is the big white box at the bottom, they actually have a slight color fade in it so that it's not too obtrusive. This was the year they really, really got design down, and this was the set they really got design work right on. So these cards were phenomenal creations. The main set ends with rookies, and the rookies aren't quite as impressive. The card is a little bit stripped down, and the big problem is the whole background is just foil, and it's a little bit too much. The card back is a little bit busier, still pretty nice, but the cards don't quite reach the level of the main set. Otherwise, these cards were really standout cards. They were shocking in how impressive they were. And they laid down a gauntlet that everybody else would have to work really hard to match up with. They also did an insert set, which was called Platinum Power, and this is kind of what we would consider to be like a Photoshop affair, where they have a whole bunch of stuff on a colored background. It looks really nice. But the thing that makes this card work really well is that it's die cut on the top, and it has a band of bronze foil along that die cutting, which adds a certain detailing to it that makes it very much enunciated, but also has kind of a reserved quality to it combined together. So this was a really impressive insert for a really impressive set. The only problem I have with 93 is that the rookies, because of all that foil, they didn't go with a foil etch, which is what they did in football. And if they had done that one thing, I think this set would have been as close to perfect as you could get. Fortunately, in 1994, they did take that lesson, and they did do an etched foil treatment on the whole card. In fact, they got rid of the border. Again, they had a bunch of little detailing all over the card, all in bronze, all around within this foil etching, but the foil etching doesn't really need anything. The way that they did it, these fairly busy images, makes these cards truly, truly impressive. Now, this entire set came with a parallel, and the parallel was die cut. And the die cut was the exact same die cut that they'd used in the insert set in 1993. So all these cards will have it, and you'll see them as we go along. So these rookies come in the regular form, and they come in the die cut. The backs are, they're not really well thought out. They look more like an insert than they do a regular card, but still, the front of the card is phenomenal. Now, for the main cards in the set, it wasn't quite as impressive because these were a solid foil card treatment with a 3/4 bleed where they put a border along the side with two black lines. The inner black line is a solid black line, and the outer black line starts as black and it fades into a bronze gold with a bunch of bronze SP logos running down the side, basically fading from the black into disappearing in the bronze down at the bottom. These cards also came with a parallel, and the backs don't really do much. Again, Upper Deck was never really known for its card backs, so they have to have a card back, so they did what they could. But that was basically the set. The rookies and the players and everything was die cut. They didn't really do too much impressive for this particular year, aside from the rookies. But fortunately, they had inserts. And these inserts, understand, also come with the same die cutting. So for the inserts, they have kind of almost a translucent feel to them, which is really kind of cool. And they did something that was truly groundbreaking, where Upper Deck has always been doing holograms. That's their anti-counterfeiting trick that they have. So every single card has a hologram. And they started out for the first 2 years doing holograms of team logos, and then they did holograms of players for 91 and 92. So doing a hologram was nothing new, but they integrated a hologram into a card. So you had a card with a hologram in it, and a very heavily detailed hologram at that. And it ran not across the top or across the bottom, but actually set up a little bit. So you had the background picture run down to the hologram and appear on the other side, and the player goes from the top to the bottom of the image across the hologram, creating a very intricate creation, which was a phenomenal card for them to make. And then the band along the side with a simple color stripe in it just made this card even more impressive. On top of that, when they did their parallels, here they changed the color band to red, and it just heightened it to a whole nother level. These cards were probably the best insert cards ever by that time. It's pretty difficult for a card brand to match it. Now, the name HoloView would continue in football and basketball, but it would not continue in baseball. This was the only year that they did HoloViews. They would continue with something of the same idea, but it is a shame this is the only year that they did these inserts. For 1995, because the 94 set wasn't really a great individual card the way that the 93 set had been, for 95 they really needed to step it up. And this set got a lot more complex. It had 3 subsets, and I'll talk about those after the base cards. And it also came with parallels the whole time, but they didn't do the parallels as die cut. In fact, all the subset cards are die cut, all the regular cards are regular. And the parallel has nothing to do with the cutting, it has to do with the foil colors, but we'll get into that in a second. So in order to get back to being the jewel of the ultra premium brand, they wanted to do these 95 cards really, really well, and they pulled that off beautifully. What they did was they created, again, a 3/4 bleed. They moved the border from one side to the other, but here, the beauty of it was the foil treatment. They put a color of foil with a gold foil band on the outside, some gold detailing on the inside, with a kind of an arrow look to it, but the gold just accentuated the color of the foil. And this wasn't just a simple red foil or blue foil. For American League it was red, for National League it was blue, but it was like a satin or almost a velvet quality to it. It had an etching that was horizontal, which created a liveliness to the foil that made it glow in a very unique way. And then it had little SP logos laced all through it. And it made it feel almost like fabric, almost like really, really fancy furniture. And with the rich quality of the lighting from the foil, it just made these cards super, super elegant. And this was exactly how you needed to create a card that defined card collecting. And that's what they were trying to do, and they succeeded with this card. In fact, this is one of the strongest cards ever created. They wanted to make a card where you weren't just collecting the Parallels, you wanted to collect the card for your player, and this was the card that you wanted to get. They knocked that one out of the park. Now, I said it comes as a parallel. The parallel is where they replace the blue or the red with not white, but a silver holofoil effect. So it has kind of a, not quite a prismatic quality to it, but it kind of feels that way. It's kind of a rich, lively texture to it. And what really makes it interesting, it already looks great, but you can actually line it up with red, white, and blue if you don't mind having two different players in the mix. But it was a great card front. The back of the card was really pretty bland. But as I said, all the subset cards are die cut. And the die cutting is, again, the same die cutting that they did in the first year and the one that they did in the second year. So it starts off with the salute cards. And the salute cards is just a couple of cards that talking about a big achievement that some player has made with a blue tint of the whole background of the card, with a write-up in the back and some statistics. It's a very basic card. It's basically just supposed to kind of show off a certain event of a player. And then they have their rookies. And these rookies continue the etched foil tradition that they had started the previous year or had inherited from '93 football. And they also used the inserts from the previous 2 years where they had a bronze detailing on the front, this time a little bit thinner, also etched in there, so it really makes a richness. And then a band on the bottom and some detailing. But this whole card is a lot deeper and richer and more elegant than the rookie cards that have been done before. It's a great, great, great looking card. The last subset that they did was checklists, and this is basically an oval for a portrait of a player, and then on the outside is kind of an approach to making it look like old-time fabric in green. They tried it, and this is kind of what they ended up with. But those are the other subsets. But again, all of these are die cut in either form, and basically the parallels are just the metal treatment on there is replaced with the holofoil. They did 2 insert sets, and one was the Platinum Power, so they brought that brand name back. And they had a similar layout, but instead of having the busy but very nice looking back, they went with a bronze back with kind of a light array in the background behind the player. And it didn't carry anywhere near as good. It kind of limped along, but it's the common insert, so it's not supposed to really be the display. Then they have their what they call special effects, and this is a really, really busy card with a chrome finish, and there's really nothing interesting about it, except for the fact that they do have a square portrait of a player, a hologram portrait of a player, and the hologram looks great, just like in the previous year, but the rest of the card's way too busy, so it entirely rides on the fact that it is rare. It's a nice set to collect, it's just the cards don't look good. Now, I need to take a second and I need to talk about another set that I'm not going to get into because it'll be a whole nother video, but in 1995 they made an SP set for draft picks. So this isn't just picks into Major League Baseball, this is actually looking at them while they're in the minors. And this set is called SP Top Prospects. The reason I'm going to talk about it is because the cards look very, very similar to the SP set. The set starts off with 10 players that look like the checklist, and where they have a green fabric-like approach on the checklist in the main set. For the minors, they use a red color. And these are not checklists, these are player cards. So if you see the red fabric, then you know that it's the minors. Now you'll notice that these cards are die cut, just like in the main set. Well, understand, every card in this set, every card in the minor league set has this die cutting on it. So then you have the actual player cards for them. And these cards are like the rookie cards in the Major League Baseball set, but they don't have the foil etching on them. So they're just a straightforward foil treatment across the entire card. That's the big difference that you can tell between them. If they're etched foil, then they're Major League. If they're not, then they're minor league. They also, in the set, have draft pick cards. And these draft pick cards are basically the Platinum Power inserts from the main set, but they're done in the set, and instead of bronze, they have gold on the background. So that's how you can tell. The big difference you can tell is the numbering, because they're right in the middle of the set. But those also exist, and you'll notice that some of the main cards also come in autographs. They also had 2 insert sets, and one of them is Time Capsule, which is 4 Michael Jordan cards. Basically, if you run into a Jordan card, that is definitely a minor league card. But the other one I'm going to talk about a little bit later on. It's called Destination Show, and it actually doesn't mirror the main set. It mirrors the last set I'm going to talk about, SP Championship. So I'll get back to that in a second. So let's talk about SP Championship. For 1995, they made one set for SP that was not the main set. They did it for football and basketball and baseball. Basketball, they also did a second set the next year, but for football and baseball, they only did the 1 year. So these cards are a lot more simple than the main set. SP Championship was intended to be more of a retail release than a hobby release. It's meant to be more affordable. And the cards are much less designed. They're very, very simplistic. The whole set is die cut in the same die cut fashion. So the main set and the parallel, all the foil is the same, all of the colors are the same. It's just the die cutting that's the difference between the main card and the parallel. The set starts off with its rookies, which is called Diamond in the Rough. And here, instead of doing an etched foil, they do, it's almost like a modeled finish. So it looks like somebody finished something and there were a lot of air pockets and there are kind of like holes in it. It's actually a really cool technique. It doesn't have the glistening quality, but it has more of a textural quality to it. So these rookies all have a big black band on the top. Well, it isn't really a band. It's got some detailing on the bottom of it. But these bands were intended for the die cutting. So when you look at the die cut version, it looks great. When you look at the regular version, it doesn't look as good. Then you have the main cards of the set. Now these are set up so that you go team by team by team. It starts off with a profiles card, and this is basically a team card. On the front, it has kind of the star of each team. On the back, it just has stats about the team. But each team starts off with a profiles card, and that player also has a player card that follows. So then you have a bunch of player cards, and then you have the next profiles card. The profiles card are pretty bold and not very interesting cards. They're meant to be kind of a frontispiece to the team, and they work very much in that way. The main player cards, though, like I said, they're extremely simplistic, but they have an elegance to it. They only have three things on it. They have the player name, they have a gold logo, but they also have a little, almost like a plaque. It's an oval with gold around the outside and then foil for the color of whichever league they're in, red and AL, blue and NL, with the team name in it. And that one little item right there, down there on the bottom right, it makes the whole card work. It makes it really, really elegant. They didn't really do the same thing in football. They just used gold. This one where they had the color in it makes it fantastic. Then they have their October Legends cards, and these are purple around the outside, has kind of a blue or almost a teal background around the player, and basically it's just talking about players who've done well in the postseason. And then they also have checklist cards, and these have kind of a navy blue border around the outside, and then a gold, kind of an old type of a feel to the background on the back. They're actually really cool cards. They also have two tributes to Cal Ripken Jr. They have a main tribute and they have a die-cut tribute, basically talking about his continuous game streak. And then they have two inserts. And the first insert is classic performances. And this is a shot of a player and then a red border along the top. And it's die-cut just like the regular set. And this is talking about a player who had a great postseason game. And ironically, with the Nolan Ryan one, on the back of all of these, there's an oval with a shot of the player. And for Nolan Ryan specifically, since he has this big portrait, the oval on the back, it's almost like they replaced his face with an image. It looks kind of eerie, but all the other ones look pretty good. Then they have their Destination Fall Classics. And these are really nice, kind of highly detailed, oldish style cards. And they are intended to talk about a player who hasn't yet had a great postseason, but that's going to be coming up. And these have the same die cutting, but this is where I also need to talk about Destination Show, because Destination Show is kind of like the same card, but you'll notice that with that one, it has the SP die cutting as opposed to the SP Championship die cutting. So that's pretty much what they did for the first 3 years, the first 4.5 sets. And it was the beginning of Ultra Premium, and it was the definition early on of Ultra Premium. Through 95, this was kind of the standard bearer. This is kind of the top. Starting in 96, with SPX, this would definitely not be the ceiling. That would continue to rise. So SP would have to have kind of its own exploration of trying to figure out what this low level of Ultra Premium would be. But that's a whole nother journey to go down. This was the beginning of really high-end cards, truly high-end cards, and it was a fun journey to go through. So I hope that you learned a fair amount as we went through these cards. I hope that if you haven't explored these cards, you go back and do so, because these are really, really, really great cards. This is probably the height of Upper Deck's design time. They made some great, great cards, and I think that these cards hold up very well over time. Now, I'm curious what you think about these, how these have held up over time. For some of you who've been collecting for years and years, do you remember when these came out? Because I sure do, and they were really impressive when they did that. These are stories that I'd like to hear a little bit more about. If you like this video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't done so, ring the bell, look for future videos that I've done, and thank you very much for watching.